Okay, we're gonna get right into
Snow White.
Yep, we're gonna get right into Snow White and this story that I have a feeling will probably die out fairly soon because nobody knows what side to take. The media has no clue who to back in this because you're going to offend everybody.
90% of the population's lost them.
Yep, exactly. So it says, Disney responds to Peter Dinklage's Snow White live-action criticism, exclusive from The Hollywood Reporter. And then I have another article that criticizes The Hollywood Reporter about this. So it says, to avoid reinforcing stereotypes from the original animated film, we are taking a different approach with these 7 characters and have been consulting with members of the dwarfism community, says Disney. And the article starts, that was the main headline. It says, Disney on Tuesday responded to harsh criticisms made by Peter Dinklage about the upcoming live-action remake of Snow White. The Emmy Award-winning Game of Thrones actor was a guest on Monday's episode of Mark Maron's WTF podcast when he blasted the announced film based on the 1937 animated classic, because they can't make new stuff because that would require you to, first of all, then they can lose their, these things eventually go into the public domain, so they have to keep making stuff. And they don't want to have to market new ideas because new ideas cost money to get people to recognize. People will go see a Snow White movie knowing nothing about it because they've heard the name Snow White before. It says, after noting the casting of West Side Story breakout Rachel Zegler, Dinklage told Maron, literally no offense to anyone, but I was a little taken aback when they were very proud to cast a Latina actress as Snow White, but you're still telling the story of Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. Take a step back and look at what you're doing here. It makes no sense to me. You're progressive in one way, but then you're still making this effing backward story about 7 dwarves living in a cave together. What the F am I doing, man? Have I done nothing to advance the cause from my soapbox? I guess I'm not loud enough, Dinklage says. Dinklage is not involved in the Disney project. I do love that he assumes that. Imagine being like of such note in society that you can be like, what, I'm not doing enough, like my beliefs haven't done enough to change a multi-gazillion dollar company like Disney.
Yeah, like an age-old tale.
Yeah, a story that's almost 100 years old by a company that's worth like a gazillion dollars, and he's like, "What? I haven't done enough to change this for you guys."
Do you think he's offended because they didn't cast him as one of the 7 drawers?
I do not think that.
I think he would have denied that.
I don't think he would have done it. I don't think he would have done the role.
Wasn't Tyrion great, you guys?
Yes.
Yes.
What's interesting about it to me is like he literally called it a soapbox, so he does see it himself that way. He's promoting his causes. And that's the thing. You can never be progressive enough. There's never a finish line, right?
I can.
You cannot. Give me an example of you being progressive enough.
Just look at me.
That is true. That beard is very progressive.
I'm so woke.
Yes.
I've never been asleep.
Well, that's because you're taking super meth from.
There we go. I mean, it helps.
You're taking the Smallville super meth that they have.
Woke.
Yes.
That's true.
It says to avoid reinforcing. So it says Disney's attempt to set the record straight following. Let out the following remarks. I love that they responded this quickly too. Like, can you imagine being important enough where then Disney itself has to respond to you like right away? It says to avoid reinforcing stereotypes from the original animated film, we are taking a different approach with these 7 characters and have been consulting with members of the dwarfism community. We look forward to sharing more as the film heads into production after a lengthy development period, a Disney spokesperson said in a statement to The Hollywood Reporter. Still, years from release, Snow White will have cultural consultants just like other live-action films such as Aladdin and Mulan. The film has been in development for 3 years. The studio has been reimagining the dwarf characters since the earliest stages. This is a product of being in a society now where everybody's connected. Like this is filmmaking by committee.
There's so much to unpack in that sentence.
Yeah, it's like if you're a company the size of Disney, you can't tell any story. It's literally the definition of that phrase, stay in your lane. Unless you're telling a story about who you are exactly, you are now going to offend everyone in some way, shape, or form with whatever story you tell.
I just feel like they're going to make it racist in a whole different dimension.
Probably. But that's the thing. You can't make everyone happy. So eventually, like, what was it when, I think they bring it up in the article from Bounding into Comics, where they talk about when Gina Carano had this incident where she wouldn't put pronouns in her bio. They tried to make her go on like a 40-person Zoom call.
Does she need to?
With members of the trans community.
Colleges make you do it now.
No,
colleges?
People were
Certain
bugging
ones.
her. People were bugging her to do this on Twitter, and she's like, "I have no problem with people doing that. I just don't want to do that. I don't need to, right? You shouldn't be forced to do something because a group of people tell you have to." And then when she did finally, she put in what was it that she put in there? It was a term from one of the Beep Bop Boop. She
Aw.
put her pronouns as Beep Bop Boop, and they were offended by that
The
because
Bebop Boot community was offended.
so they were offended by that, and they're like they said like if you want to stay working for Disney, you have to go on this Zoom call with 40 members of the LGBTQ community, which is literally the definition of a struggle session.
Right.
You can't get anything. You can't actually get to any sort of growth when 40 people are talking to you at once.
About pronouns in Twitter.
About her not putting pronouns in her bio. But that's what I'm saying. This is the result of a company being the size of Disney and trying to tell stories and then realizing that someone, somewhere, somehow will end up being offended by whatever you make.
Little known fact, I'm also the Chief Diversity Officer at Teamcast Media. You guys can check Slack right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yes.
you can check right now. I'm the Chief Diversity Officer.
Oh,
and
that's
honestly,
cool.
this sounds like a great idea.
Well, it would be like, I guess, like if they were to tell a story, what would be a story? Do they have anything that involves South America as far as like their movies?
Who?
Disney. Is there any?
South America.
Yeah. Is there any?
Encanto.
In content, so they would have to have like some type of cultural consultant from that area. I'm guessing when they made Moana.
It was Moana was basically
that's Pacific Islanders, yeah, right?
Polynesian.
So, Polynesian. So they would have had a cultural consultant for someone of Polynesian culture, right? So they have to do all this stuff by committee, and you have to believe that the storytelling somehow gets lost in all of the political correctness. Not to say that you want to go out and try to offend anyone, but there might be stuff that's important there that somebody could say, even if they're just playing it safe, like maybe remove that because it might offend someone. When that many hands get on a story before it even makes it into production, it's going to be watered down. It's going to be extremely basic, and it's going to be cookie cutter. Nothing great gets made that way.
And they're just gonna sneak in a bunch of like advertisements, like in whatever they cut from scenes. A lot of shows do this, and I think the show that like did it the absolute like the most reprehensible was like House of Cards. I'm sorry for this little diatribe, but
go ahead.
I think it like has to do with what we're talking about. So House of Cards, before like He Who Must Not Be Spoken was removed, it had this scene where like the kid of the guy where he got ribs, an African American kid.
Yep.
Like, it's important for the context of the show that's happening. So he meets the president, and he tells the kid like, hey, so I'll give you one of two options. You can either come with me and you live the task of the president for a whole day, or you can play a Sony PlayStation 4 packed with 40 games, and, including this and that. And the kid's like, I want to play the Sony PlayStation. Who says Sony PlayStation like in regular conversation? So it was just like an ad drop. And they do that every single time they cut stuff. It's like, cut that out and let's make an extra $1 million.
Yep. So the studio. Well, we did a story the other day where we talked about the last thing you want to do now is like the producer's notes always end up ruining these stories because they're looking for a certain agenda. They're looking to fit a certain cultural dynamic and all these things, and that's fine if the writer is going for that. But when it comes from the studio, when it comes from executives who are worried about focus groups and test audiences,
non-creatives,
exactly. When you put non-creatives even more in charge of creative fields.
Yep.
Even more than they already are because they're in control of the money. I think this is a sign of like the bad aspect of society being as interconnected as it is now. You can't escape the criticism anywhere you go, and it's also what happens when you make movies for Twitter.
It's less effective though, isn't it?
It's what?
It's less effective. I feel like everyone's like, yeah, okay.
You make a lot of average, but you make very little great. You make a lot of but very little amazing stuff comes out of that, right? All the great stuff that seems to be coming out right now doesn't fit this mold. Yellowstone is a good example of a show that's doing really, really well right now because
Nothing has heart.
Exactly.
No, the characters don't have synergy.
Because it feels like 9 people have created them, not one person who wrote a story that they love and care about. Right. And I mean, I have the same problem with directors. Like what you're seeing a lot more than I had ever seen in the realm of like blockbuster movies is dual directing teams. So it's like you have 2 head directors, which if anybody's been a part of the creative process on any level, it's very difficult when you're in charge to share that level of I guess, not just responsibility, but of control, right? So you have to be either in complete lockstep with one another, or you have to work very well at resolving differences and being okay. Like the Russo brothers can do it, I'm guessing, because they're brothers, right? It's probably a lot easier to argue about the creative process and then stay on good terms. But the term creative differences isn't that's not a misnomer. That's an actual thing that happens in these industries because people have different visions of what they want a story to be. And then what comes out usually ends up being somewhere closer to the middle when it's two people telling a story together. But like I said, there's the possibility that one of those people had a great story to tell. One of them had a very below average story to tell. So what you get is just mush in the middle.
We're not even getting middle ground. We're just getting this very litigious, make sure you use these keywords in reference to this and that. We're just getting a bunch of lawyer speak in the middle of shows, and it just it's so poorly.
They don't talk like that in the real world,
right? It's so, and as a result, it's so poorly written that it takes you out of the scene.
Absolutely. I told her, I said, half the things that we hate about movies, like what we would call, and I hate the term woke, I don't even care if they include it. I hate the buzzwords. Right. I hate the buzz. If I hear that it's we're going to talk about mental health, I'm like, nobody actually says that in the real world. They're like, dude, I'm fucked up right now. I'm screwed up right now. I'm having a hard time. Nobody actually uses these terms unless they're writing articles for some newspaper or they're talking on Twitter using hashtags.
A good example is The Kingsman.
Yes, we went and saw The Kingsman, and there's a character. So it takes place during World War I, and this woman from a rich family goes to her son. She's like, families with privilege like ours. I'm like, nobody in 1914 said that ever.
In 1914,
they might have said families who have been
wealth,
people, families lucky enough to have what we have, or to have the things that we have. You say something like that.
Yeah.
Families like ours who have been blessed to have the things that we have in life. You say that. You don't say a word that is popular in 2022.
And here's a hot take. A lot of times they put minorities in scenes where there's white people. Isn't that implying that these communities don't have a rich and beautiful history to draw new creative things from?
Yeah. Why tell the story of Snow White with a different race when that's a specific? It's like they recast Ariel as African American.
Yeah. I'm sure.
But so the question I always get is aren't there princesses from Africa that we could be telling that story? But you can't market that story cheaply. Not? No, I'm saying you can't market it cheaply like they can with these. There's so much name recognition to The Little Mermaid that they save money just by making The Little Mermaid movie rather than telling a new story.
That's why I think Japan is kind of beating everybody, because I was so excited. I sent you the article about the Black Samurai that I told you that's actually from Japanese history. They actually made it. So I'm kind of legit happy that Japan is beating the US because they're writing new stories with different cultures and different races.
And that's what we should be aiming to do here. Moana is a fantastic example of how that works.
Well, same thing with Encanto.
I didn't see Encanto. I love Moana though. But these are new stories, and I would argue that Moana is pretty not culturally relevant. It's not like there's a new movie coming out, but people know when you hear that term, when you hear that name, people know that they're talking about a Disney movie, right? Yeah. So just start telling new stories and stop changing everything about the old ones.
For real.
Yeah.
Everyone's how many? I mean, the only reboot series that's decently good is Spider-Man.
Yeah.
How many times do we need to I don't know, see Sherlock Holmes and all these guys? Enough.
And the funny thing is that another example of here's an example of when race and gender swapping worked really well. When they did a Sherlock in New York series called Elementary on it was a CBS or ABC. It's irrelevant. And they had Johnny Lee Miller as Sherlock Holmes. They had Lucy Liu play Watson, except for it was Joan Watson, not John Watson, and it was really good because they never drew attention to the she was just the character. They didn't try to brag about it.
As a woman.
They never tried to brag about it and make it a thing. They also managed to avoid, they literally, the reason they swapped that character was because the producer of the show wanted to prove that men and women could work together without being romantically involved. I don't know if I buy that that's why he actually did it. I think that maybe the studio might have had notes that maybe it's a good idea to want to change it. But they hired Lucy Liu not because she's a woman, not because she's Asian American. No. They hired her because she's a fantastic actress and she did the role justice. So it's you can do these things, but quit patting yourself on the back every time you do it as if you're because they're always we are changing the world by telling these stories over again with different demographics. I'm like, you're not changing anything.
And that's how I feel about the Cowboy Bebop show.
Yeah.
Yep.
By the way, I didn't watch it because like out of respect for the anime, like straight up. But it's like they got this guy as the protagonist, and he's a genuinely like a good like actor, but he's a straight man.
Yeah.
He's not cool.
Yeah.
He's not a cool guy.
Yep.
Why didn't they get the Shang-Chi guy? Like, he's cool, he's hip, you know.
America loves Simu Liu.
He's likable.
Ugh.
I know you dislike it because I make
Yeah.
clips, but like I think he's likable and I think he's hilarious. So
Yeah.
like if you want to do the representation right, like do it right. Like don't just treat him like any Asian guy.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, like any Asian guy with the I mean not even any Asian guy, but like
Yeah.
if it's your desire, you know, to represent that culture, it's like
Well, that was what Simu Liu originally wanted to do. So before
he wanted to be Spike?
No, not Spike. I mean, like, to represent, like, Asian people in media, like, as in, like, Hollywood. Like, that was his first initial thing before he got his biggest role playing the brother in Kim's Convenience. Like, he wanted to be a representation, but he couldn't because every time Hollywood would hire him, he's either the nerdy Asian guy or the martial art guy.
And Hollywood is still super racist.
Yep.
Like they made Snake
are.
Eyes Asian because like, well, it's a martial arts guy. He's got to be Asian. And like, you know, that's like super racist, right? Like they
Nope.
don't get it.
You remember they made a CW show called Kung Fu, and it has all the Asian people.
Yep, and they all hang out at the community center.
Yep.
And they all do martial arts, and
There we
that's
go.
not racist at all.
Yep, and Asian people apparently don't go to real doctors.
They well, yeah, of course, you got to go to the one in like what in Chinatown or something.
Yeah.
Like super racist, and they don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to talk about how good I'm being.
Good
Dane-
job,
For
Dane.
real.
We are so proud of you.
I am.
We are
Yeah.
so proud of you.
We
if
are.
if we had a rated R segment, that would be
Members only with Dane would be lit.
dope.
Oh my god, you guys need to subscribe more. We can't do
real.
this unless you guys subscribe more, share, like, and recommend it to more people. Then we're gonna have like a members only segment where
Yep.
Dane just lets it all loose.
You guys, I know we're just meeting, but you want this.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Okay.
You want Brett and Miracle specifically, like off the cuff.
Yep. Well, I find a good way to toe the line.
Them's wild boy and girl.
Yeah.
I don't know, but for me, again, I wish Disney can write like different stories of different races because, like, again, like it's kind of racist, like saying like other ethnic backgrounds don't have culture.
Yep.
Let's just put them in these already established things like Snow White.
So Peter Dinklage is like doing God's work by saying like, "Hey Disney."
Well, he think he is.
He thinks he is. He's like, I like Peter Dinklage as an actor. I'm not a huge fan of like the idea that you're like talking about your soapbox. I
He's
guess.
just
Yeah.
like a jerk.
He is. He looks like one.
He's it is what it is, man. It is. But I just thought that was interesting because I thought the funniest part was cultural consultants and the fact that Disney responded that fast to this. So I don't know.
Again, Disney, write more things.
Yeah.
You don't need a culture diversity consultant.
You know for a fact that they probably get thousands of scripts a day like from people. Like
I mean,
Yeah.
If your job depends on like fighting evil in the world, like trust me, you're gonna find it.
and we're also talking about the company that like made Mulan and didn't really pay attention to like where they were making it.
There's so many books on Disney.
Yep.
Yep. I don't know. I'm just.
That's a rabbit hole we shan't go down today.
Yeah, for real.
Like that I used shan't in a sentence. That was,
Shan't.
that was fantastic.
Sweet
There you
use of
go.
shant, bro.
Thank you. Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.
Bye.